Good evening, everyone. It is 7 o'clock, and I actually believe we have all our trustees in attendance. Trustee Coombs Ismail is running a little late tonight, and Trustee Apt is feeling under the weather. But the other 5 of us are here and logged in, so I would say that, I would ask actually, Miranda, are we recording?
Yes, we are.
Okay, in that case, I will call to order this meeting of the Nederland Board of Trustees on February 16th, 2021 at 7 p.m. and ask Miranda to please call the roll.
Mayor Larson.
Here.
Trustee Taylor.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover.
Here.
Trustee Danforth.
Here.
Trustee Corvalin.
Here.
And please note for the record that Trustee Apt is absent and Trustee Coombs Ismail will be late.
Very good. Moving forward, we have 2 items in the consent agenda, the warrants and meeting minutes from the previous meeting. Any trustees have any questions, comments, or motions regarding the consent agenda?
This is Trustee Taylor. I move that we approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Trustee Danforth. Miranda.
Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover.
Yes.
Mayor Larson.
Yes.
Trustee Danforth.
Yes.
Trustee Corvalin.
Yes.
Trustee Taylor.
Yes.
Very good. Consent agenda is passed unanimously. And we will move on to public comment on non-agenda items. I want to thank David Seitz for his comment and question that is answered in the packet. And ask then for anyone else who would like to speak for up to 3 minutes on anything that's not on our agenda tonight. Now would be your opportunity. So if you could catch our attention either by raising your hand, turning your video and waving your arms, or just simply starting to speak, the floor shall be yours.
Yeah, sounds about.
Not hearing anyone with public comment, we will move on to our first only informational item of the night, which is an update on the Master Infrastructure Plan, which will be introduced by Chris Pelletier and our friends at JVI. So Chris, please take it away.
Thanks. Caught me off guard. I guess my agenda is a little older than yours. Town staff has been working with the town's engineers, JVA Inc., on updating the master infrastructure plan for the utilities portion of the plan for the past couple of months. Town staff had received just over $39,000 in funding from DOLA to make this update and to also work on a rate study and update the town's rates. But this sort of is the preliminary step towards achieving that goal. So the past couple of months, we've been working closely with Andrew Sparn and his team, and I'll let Andrew introduce his team in a moment. And he's here to provide you an update on the results of our work together. So without further delay, I'll just pass this off to Andrew and let him provide his presentation.
Andrew?
It doesn't appear that Andrew is connected to audio.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if that was connected or just not muted.
There we go. Andrew, are you there?
Oh, he's muted again.
There we go. I think I figured it out. Got my audio working. Good evening.
There we go. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you very much. I do this all day. You'd think I'd know how to do it.
We're a year into this and we're all still figuring it out, right? So, but yeah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate you, putting us at the top of the agenda. We do love all your business, but we also appreciate the opportunity to get in front of you before you tire out. We'll help tire you out here. So let's see if I can start my video. And then Janet was going to share her screen. I think she was having the same challenges with the audio as well. So I'm gonna give her 1 second.
I'm having audio.
Yeah, you got it. I hear you, Janet.
Yep, we hear and see both.
Audio issues.
Yep. Lovely. I might be able to pull up the presentation as well.
And Andrew, I have your presentation too, if you just want me to pull it up, and you can tell me next slide, whatever is.
Yeah, you might as well do that, Miranda. I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, this is Leah with JVA.
Hi, Leah. We have the floor. Can you see our screen?
I cannot. I'm having a hard time with my WebEx app, but so I just called in.
Okay.
But I'm going to try to load it here.
Yeah, just load it, join meeting, and you're not up for about 15 slides, so I'll buy you some time here. And
Thanks.
Okay, my audio is working now. I apologize for that. It wasn't.
I was having the same troubles. We used to use WebEx, and then we switched to Teams, and now apparently you can't teach an old dog new tricks, I guess. So thank you guys for allowing us to give you the 10,000-foot view and run through the master infrastructure plan update. And I hope you did read every page that's in your packet, and you certainly have more detail than is in this presentation. So today, our entire team isn't part of the presentation. We have Josh McGibbon, who is our principal in charge and vice president at JVA. I think I did see you on, Josh. And then I'm Andrew Smarn, and we have Janet, audio and all. And then we just heard from Leah. So those are our presenters. We had about 8 engineers working on this project. So we put a lot of heart and soul into this with town staff. So yeah, go ahead, Janet, jump to the next one, because it looks like you did take it over. I think you can just click the second slide and then work on making the presentation here in a second.
I write software and I still hate it.
Thank you for that interjection. Well, it's also a lot of
take to make a presentation.
Yeah, Janet, do you want me to just share while you? I have your PowerPoint too. And
Miranda, let's do it.
okay.
Too much pressure on us. We can speak to it, but how about you run it for us? That'd be great.
Got
All
it.
right. So take 3. You know, what is the MIP as you jump to the second slide, Miranda? You know, this is a very comprehensive document if you read it, and it really is to help you guys plan for the future, as well as make sure you're serving your existing customers reliably. We focused on the raw water, water distribution, water treatment, as well as the wastewater infrastructure. You can see the bottom bullet. The other sections, including stormwater, erosion control, and road, were included in the original MIP from 2013. However, not as many of those projects have been checked off the list in the last 8 years, and therefore it wasn't a focus of our effort. However, we do recommend in the next year or two that the town consider updating the MIP for stormwater, erosion, and roadway. The real conclusion of the MIP is what are the projects that are a priority for the town. And it might be to replace antiquated infrastructure. It's also to meet projected growth. And how do you prioritize those projects and then figure out how to pay for them? It is a living document. You know, 10 years down the road, your priorities and the dynamics within the town might be different. So you will utilize this and update it into the future. That's the beautiful biosolids building down there. You can jump to the next one. So at the 10,000 foot view, it's the planning conditions. We have to look at growth and what the town's going to look like over the next 20 years. We dig in deep, do a comprehensive look at the water system as well as the wastewater system. And then this MIP update also included a hydraulic distribution model. And then out of the MIP, we conclude with the capital improvement plan. And then at the end of the document, we do introduce many different funding options. And we know that real money has to pay for these projects. So this MIP will be paired with what Rolf Tellis and Andrew Ream will be doing here in the near future. But not all projects can be funded by ratepayers. And that's why it's important to always keep our ear low to the ground for funding opportunities. We can go to the next one. So the planning conditions, we look at 20 years into the future because that's what you like infrastructure and treatment processes to last for at minimum. So we plan for 20 years. We look at growth and we project 20 years into the future. However, on the CIP, the capital improvement plan, we don't list projects 20 years into the future. Really, we keep that at the 10-year planning period. It's hard to know what construction costs are going to be in 15 years, 20 years. It's also hard to know what technologies there are going to be for treatment or what the priorities of the town are. So therefore, the planning period is 20 years, but the CIP you'll see is 10 years. So to project in the future, we have to look where the town is now and then try to get out that crystal ball and look at what growth may look like. So you can see historically, you've gone from about 1,400 people to about 1,600 people over the previous 10 years, which is about a 0.8% growth rate. We utilize the state demography office and DOLA and look at what their projections are for the zip code and the census designated place of Nederland. And they're projecting about 1% over the next 20 years, which we think is a pretty realistic number with, current pandemic and maybe post-pandemic migration patterns. I think 1% is pretty real. So we look at, how many taps you're going to have and how many humans. You can see at the bottom the 20-year population that we're projecting in 2040. If someone has their calculator out, that's more than a 1% growth rate, going from 1,600 to 26. And that's because there's also some known developments within town or areas that are prone to be developed that we wanted to make sure we identify and plan for. You can jump to the next slide, please. Thank you.
And I'll jump right in. So as part of the planning conditions, we evaluated historical water demand and production. The town's total water production is estimated using the water treatment plant master meter data, which represents the total amount of water pumped from the water treatment plant to the system storage tanks and the customers. The graph on the screen shows the total water treatment plant production in million gallons per day, which I'm going to be referring to as MGD. And this is shown from the month of January 2017 through October 2020. Each color represents data for a specific year. So in purple, we have 2017, and in orange, we have 2020. We can see from the graph that the highest average daily production occurred in July of 2020 at around 0.18 MGD, and that the highest peak day production occurred in April of 2017 at around 0.33 MGD. Also from the graph, we can see that the highest production values occur during the summer months, which is expected. We can jump to the next slide, please. Thank you. As part of the planning conditions, we evaluated also, Okay, so we use our water production data and the town's population to determine the gallons per capita per day values so that we could project the water demand up to the year 2040. So here we see that the average day demand was estimated using a value of 97 gallons per capita per day, while the maximum month average day demand was estimated using a value of 111 gallons per capita per day. Finally, the peak day demand was estimated using a value of 191 gallons per capita per day. And again, all of this data is from historical information that we show you on the previous slide. So we can see here in the table that by the year 2040, we're looking at a 0.5 million gallons per day, MGD. So as part of our analysis, we also compare the production data to the water demand data to estimate the percentage of unaccounted for water. For the water demand data, we look into the town's water billing data as well as other records that the town has, such as water that's used for construction. There are several factors that contribute to water being unaccounted for, such as losses in the distribution system through aging or damaged infrastructure, meter reading inaccuracies, firefighting, distribution system flushing, and unauthorized consumption. In the case of Netherlands, challenges have been identified with the proper implementation of the advanced metering infrastructure that was installed over 10 years ago. The town has been proactive about replacing the meters, and within the last 5 years, most of the meters have been replaced and are known to be very accurate. The challenges for the town have been identified with the transmitting units, and this is unique to the town in that a lot of the issues are related to battery failure due to cold temperatures or signals being lost due to the transmitter being in unsuitable terrain. There's also a lot of careful coordination that is needed when a meter needs to be serviced. So staff has to really coordinate very carefully with the homeowner. And so these issues, in order to rectify these issues, it would take a designated staff member to be able to make sure that all these transmitters are properly recording and sending the right data. The successful of what I'm calling the advanced metering infrastructure system, it's key to be able to know what the percentage of unaccounted for water it truly is. And we can jump to the next slide, please. So on this slide, we're graphically presenting the projected water demand, which was estimated based on the water treatment plant production data. And this includes the amount of water that's unaccounted for. So we're doing a conservative estimate here. So once again, the water demand projections were developed using those estimated gallons per capita per day values that I previously touched on. In the graph, we're also showing the water treatment plant maximum capacity at 0.4 MGD and the water treatment firm capacity at 0.2 MGD. So the firm capacity is what the state defines as your maximum plant capacity with one of the largest membrane train out of service. In the case of Netherlands, there's 2 membrane trains, and so each one has a 0.2 MGD capacity. So we can immediately see from this graph that the peak day demand is exceeding the firm capacity of the water treatment plant. And that's why the town relies on water storage to satisfy the peak on those days. In terms of trigger points, we see 2025 as a year in which the water treatment plant needs to be expanded because the maximum month average day demand will be exceeding the firm capacity of the water treatment plant. Next slide, please.
So on the wastewater side, similarly, we also look at the influent historical flow as well as loading to the wastewater plant. And in that first graph, what I think is really apparent, if you look at 2017, 2018, and then 2019, the maximum, the minimum, as well as the average daily flows into the wastewater plant have decreased. So I think that's really important to acknowledge that the town has reduced influent flow to the wastewater plant through spending money in the collection system to minimize infiltration and inflow into the sewer system, I&I, which is basically you're treating groundwater at the wastewater plant. So by minimizing this, spending money on that front end, you can see real results in the historical data here. And I think it's really important to acknowledge. The bottom table just summarizes the last 3 years as far as the biochemical oxygen demand, which is the load to the plant, and the average and the maximum and minimum. So let's jump to the visual part of it. So here it's very apparent. You can see how it is reduced over the last 3 years. You see those peaks in the middle, kind of in those high groundwater months, which is indicative of infiltration and inflow to the sanitary sewer collection system, kind of that April, May, June timeframe when we know groundwater is high during runoff. And the green line is your 80% of your plant's permitted capacity. And that really is a trigger point in your discharge permit. And per regulation 22, you need to start planning for an expansion of a plant when you're crossing that threshold. And then the red line above that, the 250,000 gallons per day, that's your design capacity. And so by the time you cross that line, you need to have the expansion completed because people don't stop flushing. So I think it's just important to notice the decrease and really applaud town staff for the efforts to reduce I&I, and know that with those peaks, there still is I&I. So next slide, please. So projecting into the future, there's going to be approximately 610 taps over the 20-year planning period. There's also 190 homes that are not sewered. The historical 3-year average is about 181,000 gallons per day to the wastewater plant, or 0.181 MGD. However, for starting our projections into the future, we didn't use this max month average day flow from the last 3 years. We looked at the 2019 value to project from because of the I&I reduction efforts. Looking at the loading side of things, in the 0 to 5 years, we're using 281 milligrams per liter. That concentration is indicative of what you see right now currently. And you take that concentration and then you multiply it by the gallons per person per day to get your total loading. But recognizing that the town will continue to reduce I&I into the system, you have to look at the concentration increasing. So you think of I&I as dilution, so you have a lower number. As you reduce that dilution and mitigate the I&I efforts, we do anticipate the concentration to increase slightly. So we're using the 300 milligrams per liter for 5 years plus. And there's your headworks right there for anyone who hasn't been down to the wastewater plant. So here on the projecting flow into the future, again, the green line is that 0.2 MGD or 200,000 gallons per day. And when you cross that threshold for your flow into the wastewater treatment plant, you need to start planning for an expansion. So if the 1% growth continues and a couple of the known developments, if things go as projected, we're looking at 2025, 2026 to start thinking about the planning for an expanded facility. And then in 2030, you hit the next trigger point, which is the 95% of your capacity, meaning that you need to be under construction for the expansion. And then further on down the road, that 2034 is really when the plant expansion needs to be completed, because you will be realizing a flow that's greater than the existing design capacity. You can jump to the next one. It looks very, very similar. This is just the loading. And it doesn't matter which one comes first. If your wastewater plant flow hits one of these trigger points, you need to start taking action. However, on the loading side, you also need to take action. And they're pretty similar on dates. I believe the 95% is kicked out 1 extra year from 2030 to 2031. But it's still, they both appear about that 2025, 2026 time frame to be thinking about planning for the expansion of the wastewater treatment facility, assuming the growth and everything in the planning conditions. You can go to the next one, Miranda.
Okay, so after we had our planning conditions and our projections, We then look at a comprehensive evaluation of the water system. And so we look at water rights in raw water storage. We also look at the raw water collection system, the water treatment plant, the finished water storage tanks, which there's a total of 4 in the distribution system, and the booster stations as well. Next slide, please.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
We can hear you, Leah.
Oh, perfect. So I'm Leah. Andrew didn't, I don't know if he introduced me or not, but I worked primarily on the distribution system and on the water model. So here's just a map of your existing distribution system that we developed as part of this project. The colors in this figure all represent different pressure zones in the system. And this figure, if you're in the MIP, can be found all the way back on page 216. There's a couple of other accompanying figures that show the actual physical elevations of your critical infrastructure, like your tanks and your booster stations and those PRVs. We can go on and go to the next slide. So part of putting that figure together, we compiled information on the existing distribution system and performed an asset inventory of all the existing infrastructure covering the items listed on this page. So other information that we included in there were things like pipe age, obviously pipe material, PRV locations, set points, and the age of those PRVs, and also isolation valves. And as you could see on that previous figure, all those little red dots were the hydrants. So we put those together as well as part of that asset inventory. And we can go to the next slide, perfect. And so once we had that information, we essentially took all of that and put that into this great modeling software called WaterGems. And using the existing drawings of the distribution system along with county LiDAR data to estimate elevations, we were able to build this model using about 260 nodes that each represent hydrants throughout the distribution system. Information like pipe material, diameter, pipe age were all incorporated into the model, as well as isolation PRV valves and those set points. We also used information from Chris to assume roughness coefficients for the pipes, and this was important so that we could calibrate the system. In addition, we also used current water use data to estimate the demand per each node in the system. Essentially, we just took the average day water demand from 2019 and then divided that evenly amongst the nodes, or all the points that are within the model. Obviously, this isn't a true representation of what's actually happening in the system at any given moment. But while we first started building the model, it gives us a good idea about how the model is operating and you know, where we're seeing flows and where there might be an issue with how we set up the model. For example, we know when, you know, anybody turns on their tap right now, they get water. So we just use this initial demand to make sure that once we run the model, that every node in the system is actually seeing flow. So once that model was built, it was calibrated primarily using hydrant testing data. To do this, we picked random hydrants throughout the system in each pressure zone and then compared the static pressure field data from the hydrants to the pressures that we were generating in the model. If the pressure differences were significant, then we went back and would confirm things like elevation, pipe material, diameter, and then also we might have adjusted that roughness coefficient until we saw those error rates go down and kind of closer to 0. And you do see, if you look at this table that we provided on the calibration, that you do see some numbers that are fairly high, like we have a difference of 35 and 19, but really on average, we want that average value to be as close to 0 as possible. And so it's good to keep in mind that as we develop these models, that they'll never exactly match what's actually happening in the system 100% in real life. And so the calibration step is really an ongoing process. And as we dig deeper and deeper into the model, these calibration numbers tend to get better and better. And, you know, as you guys are all well aware, you have several pressure zones and booster stations, and that really makes setting up one of these models fairly exciting. And can also be fairly time consuming. You know, we did work a lot with Chris on really nailing down, you know, all the pipe material and especially all the isolation valves and where they're located and which ones are open and which ones are closed. So yeah, so this was a great process to go through. And in the end, you know, once we end up getting all those calibration steps taken care of and we have a high level of confidence in how the model is operating, we can use this model and have used this model to evaluate fire flow situations and then also look at future development, such as, you know, the potential for removing the hilltop tank and how that would impact the system.
And that brings us into our next slide with is a proposed near-term water system improvement. So following that comprehensive water system evaluation and with all the data that we got from the water model, JVA and the town identify near-term water system improvements that are necessary. And these projects should be budgeted for completion within the next 10 years. So we identified a pond rehabilitation project for the raw water collection system. For the water treatment plant, we identified a membrane replacement. In addition, the membranes have reached the end of their useful life and can just really be out of service any moment. The town staff has been really proactive about keeping the life of those membranes, but again, it's something that needs to happen fairly soon. We also identified a need for a water treatment plant expansion, as we mentioned a few slides prior. For the water distribution systems, there's systems for the overall distribution that include advanced meter infrastructure management. Again, this is critical for getting good readings and be able to know with certainty a percentage of unaccounted for water. We also identified a project for low flow fire hydrants, water main flushing, backflow prevention implementation as well. For certain certain areas of the town, we identified the need for pipeline additions and upsize of pipes. Some of those would be for the downtown, Big Springs for pipeline freezing prevention, and the Sunnyside distribution pipeline addition. So we can move to the next slide, please.
Yeah, so similar to the water system, you know, we evaluated all aspects of your sanitary sewer collection system, which, lucky for the town, your wastewater plant's at the low point and you don't have lift stations all over town, and you just gravity to your plant. The left table is just a snapshot. In addition to evaluating the system, we also compiled very detailed mapping for town staff use to whether keep in their truck or hang on the wall to know where infrastructure is, and compiled an asset inventory for that infrastructure. Then at the wastewater treatment facility, we looked at all aspects of treatment from the headworks through the secondary treatment of the sequencing batch reactor, as well as the biosolids treatment facility, which is nice and new. So there are also priority projects on the wastewater side in the wastewater system. I think some town-wide projects that are near term would be grease interceptor. I think it's important to really develop and formalize that policy. And you can read more in depth on the reasoning for that in the master plan. You can see a snapshot of a simple grease interceptor there on the right, but that should be a near-term effort by the town and not at a huge cost. Other items that are town-wide are, you know, continuing to mitigate I&I, because the more groundwater you can prevent from entering the collection system, hopefully the longer you can delay expanding your existing plant. And so, you know, we prioritize based on where you're likely to see that groundwater and where we believe that the higher infiltration and inflow would be. And so you can see, you know, throughout the neighborhoods, Old Town, certainly downtown, and then also Lakeview, High Point. There's a lot of neighborhood specific projects that could be attributed to the sanitary sewer system. Piping additions to serve other communities, other neighborhoods, let's say Hilltop, Lakeview, High Point, as well as Bobcat Ridge. And then really 3 phases to serve Big Springs, starting with the new loop over by Wildwood Drive, and then expanding that to the collection system with a lift station at the Baker cul-de-sac, and then finally the new collection and the second lift station for final build out. Those are expensive projects. We did estimate their cost, and we did include in this report because we wanted a comprehensive report. Alluding to the CIP, as you'll see, they're not included in the overall CIP. So you can jump to the next one. At the wastewater treatment facility, the near-term grit removal, which is underway. We are actually permitting and designing with town staff right now for grit removal at the wastewater plant. And that project's just really important because it does protect your existing assets, your pumps and your processes that you have at the wastewater plant by getting the grit out of the system. You know, the next big one, you saw that trigger point on those graphs. If growth does continue over the next 5 years, in that 5-year-ish time frame, we would anticipate that you'll have to start planning for a wastewater treatment facility expansion. And then there's also dollars in the near term for your standard replacement. Things wear out, things reach the end of their useful life, or unknown items come up and it's an emergency. So we included dollars for emergency repair and replacement. And then long-term, the larger items to replace in the future, as well as the actual capital costs for upgrading your wastewater treatment facility. And then at some point in the future, we know the biosolids handling project completed phases 1 and 2 of the town's vision for sustainable composting and a Class A biosolid. So the existing biosolids facility achieves the stabilization as well as then the dewatering to get to a Class B biosolid. Well, at some point in the future, to truly realize the goal of that Class A biosolid, an additional process would be added. You can jump there.
Okay, this is a busy table with all that background information, we get to the capital improvements plan. So what we're looking at here is the expenditure table for the water projects. So as I mentioned, we identified 3 projects for the raw water and water treatment plant improvements, and we have categorized these projects in order of importance, and with the town input, we identified dates when they should be started and completed. So again, as Andrew mentioned, these are projects that apply to the overall town and should be budgeted to affect each and every customer's plan as part of the rate study. We did also identify some other projects that are going to be on the next slide, but what I wanted to also mention here is that you can see that some of those projects the load can be shared throughout the years within the 10-year planning horizon, and some other, like the water treatment plant expansion, you know, it just needs to happen, and it's going to be a big ticket item by 2025. This table also shows, you know, our the dollars are rectified to be future dollars. So while a project is listed in the present value, what you see in the year that it needs to be completed is that future cost. So we have a total of, $6.6 million for water system improvements. And then on the next slide, those are the projects that we develop an opinion of probable cost for information purpose, and they're not going to be part of the rate study, as they shouldn't be part of the overall town budget.
So now you see blue means water, green means wastewater. So that's how you can easily know which one you're looking at. But here we include the priority projects for the sanitary sewer system. You see the grease policy interceptor, industrial pretreatment, And then the more capital improvement type projects with repairing, replacing, lining, sanitary sewer infrastructure within the downtown, Old Town, Lakeview, High Point, and Indian Peak Sunnyside systems. You know, it's hard to know what your budgets are each year and how much you can allocate for each project, but we do think it's important to recognize the large dollar amount of these projects and try to chip away at them and budget small amounts each year to take them on, or pursue a grant or loan to try to do all of it at one time. And these numbers and these tables will be utilized by Rothtellis when they do the detailed rate analysis with you, and they'll work to see how, if you move a project from one year to another year, and shift priorities, or earmark one that it needs to be a grant and loan to be realistic, or they'll work with you on the true dollars and cents. Our task really with the town was to take all the priorities and what is needed and get a cost to them, and then try to pick a year when we think they're needed to happen based on a trigger point or based on town input and institutional knowledge. And then you also see the wastewater projects there at the bottom with the grit removal, the expansion planning, and then just trying to maintain a real reserve each year for an emergency repair or replacement. And the total is about $4 million for the 10-year planning horizon. And then on this next slide here, we did do, I'd say, beyond conceptual. We did try to sketch out how you would sewer Big Springs, I think with great input from town staff, and then also looking at the High Point collection system, Hilltop, and Bobcat Ridge. And so you have almost have double on those kind of out of the main town projects as you do with the town projects. So, but we put the effort into estimating them and prioritizing them, but they are not included in the CIP that Rothtellis will utilize for the rate study. You can jump, Miranda. Did I freeze, or did everyone else freeze? That's always the question.
Miranda, can we have the next slide, please? I can hear you, Andrew.
Yeah, I think we can hear you.
Okay.
Miranda she just had her computer glitch and lost internet, so she's hoping Janet can take over and share.
Yeah,
Perfect.
let me see, make sure that I don't have any technical difficulties anymore.
Nice.
Well, that's always the hard part too, is in stealing the ball from someone. Sometimes
that
doesn't.
That was really embarrassing. Yeah. Okay, so I will share here pretty shortly. We were one slide away, so we almost
did it.
It's always the case, right?
So I think Miranda will have to unshare before.
That's what I'm worried about.
Share. So
I think you can take it over.
We may have to. That's possible.
I think
since she's the host, she's all powerful.
Let me try.
Oh, looks like there we go. Janet, there we go.
Yeah,
oh, man.
and I will have to get us scrolling all the way down to the last slide. My apologies for that. Okay. And
there we go.
Right. So I think what's important on the funding opportunities, we've listed a whole host of different ways to chase down dollars for infrastructure projects. Town staff have been great in the past to make projects real, and JVA also prides ourselves in applying for these opportunities and being able to make the town dollar go further. A program that's not even on here, a small communities grant, actually just came out on Friday. So they come out all the time. This is a static table, but we do live with the opportunities as they come and go and are in close contact with town staff. I believe Chris is even meeting with USDA tomorrow for potential grant dollars. So there's the bulk of the presentation. I think we want to open it up to questions that you all may have.
Well,
this
thank
is
you
Julian.
guys.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you. There was a lot of information in there, and a lot of things. So I was going to open this up to the floor, and I think Julian is ready to jump right in. So go for it, Julian.
I jumped the gun there. You were indicating that there would be likely a nonlinear growth of population for Nederland. You boosted the growth just a little bit, and you were saying that there were numerous factors involved in that decision. I wonder if you could tell us a little more about what contributed to your population growth projections for Nederland.
Yes, that's a great question. Yeah, so if it was just 1%, it would be linear. However, when you look at that, it jumps and it's not linear. And I'm trying to find the page here. I have the PDF for the master plan. But in the planning conditions, we do detail kind of known developments or properties that have been, okay, here we go. The population.
I'm sharing my screen. You still can see my screen, right?
Oh, look at you, Janet. Yeah.
I'm getting you to that table.
Yeah, it's page 16 of 243. Perfect. And if you even go up one more page. So this table, Julian, really was our attempt with town staff, getting out that crystal ball, and then just thinking of these known locations within your within the service area that may develop. And then how likely is it? Is it, you know, we think it's going to happen in the next couple years, or is it, you know, the 20 years out? And so that's, you have your just 1% growth, your standard growth, but then larger known developments is what give you kind of those jumps based on these years of when they would come into the service area.
Excellent.
Yeah, so
I missed that table somehow. I'm glad you pointed it out to me.
Yes, it has that 1% growth column, as well as then it has kind of what's additional for that development.
Very fine. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Go through here and call on other trustees to see if questions, beginning with Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Sorry, I'm just absorbing all this information, and I do not have any questions at this time.
All right, Trustee Danforth.
I don't have any questions at this time either.
Mayor Pro Tem Baumhofer.
A lot of information. The couple questions I do have, it looks like the projections right now, based upon our population projection, increase, is we're looking like we need to basically expand both our water treatment and our wastewater treatment facilities around the world.
That, yeah, colliding courses there. I think you're right. The water treatment facility is probably a more near term. Honestly, the existing membranes have not been replaced and have most certainly outlived their demand or their useful life.
Yep.
Based on doing things like putting in the streaming current monitor and being able to really optimize coagulation injection and just good care by the operators. But I'd say on a piece of paper, if everything in the projections are according to plan, then they're in similar years. You're correct.
So that just
This is Josh with JVA. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you great.
We hear you, Josh.
I was just going to add that really the efforts with I&I can change that course. We're taking the today's flows to the wastewater treatment facility and saying that if you project that at the growth rate over time, you're going to hit these milestones on the wastewater side at the colliding time. If we continue to target I&I, we could slow that course potentially by reducing that those target dates. So, and what that means is that you might be able to push out your wastewater expansion beyond the water expansion by really tackling that I&I like you have been doing.
I was, yeah. one of the questions I had is, so if we really prioritized I&I, and then I noticed in the report you guys had also called out potential gray water mitigation if the Board of Trustees was able to pass an ordinance that allowed for gray water collection. Do you guys have any information on that? Are there residential systems that are available that can be easily installed? Because it seems to me that if we're looking at the need to, it looks like the priority, as I read it in the report, is let's take care of our aging, ailing, water treatment facility first, and let's try to push back any more upgrading of our wastewater treatment. We've been putting a lot of effort into our wastewater treatment and our sewage treatment plant, and it seems like our water treatment has fallen a little bit behind. So I'm kind of a little bit interested in how much we could mitigate the need for developing any more on the wastewater, maybe push that out 2-3 years if we kind of combined I&I efforts with a really aggressive kind of working with the sustainability department and very other aspects of town to really engage in a gray water collection system.
And that matches very well with, the sustainability goals within the town that we always like to have a lens on when we're working with Ned. And I think that does have potential to, push that project out, reduce the I&I, and then explore, more sustainable ways to reduce flow to the plant. Also, if you look at the pre-treatment one, an ordinance, let's call it, and really formalizing that and making it robust. That's another way as additional commercial or higher load businesses come in to make sure that they're not affecting the wastewater treatment plant.
The gray water regulations are at the very forefront right now. I think there's an opportunity to kind of lead the way as a community and take that on. There are only a couple projects in the state that are moving forward, and so it's kind of new to everybody. But I would say gallon for gallon, your best bet is I&I. For every hole you plug in your sewer system, there's just that much less wastewater coming to your wastewater treatment plant versus a few houses a year coming onto a gray water system. And I don't want to diminish that as a long-term goal. I think it's very valid, but gallon for gallon going to your wastewater treatment plant, a simple route in a service is adding, thousands of gallons of water, excuse me, to your wastewater treatment facility. And that is a great way to focus on pushing the life of that treatment plant a few years.
Thanks for answering that. And then I guess my only other question is looking at projection, particularly the graph you had pointed out to Trustee Taylor. If some of those developments start to pick up a little bit more than you have projected, how drastically is that going to affect our need to be looking at upgrading these facilities or expanding them? Let's say
it accelerates.
Developing 3 homes a year and a couple of these multifamily units come through in the next couple of years.
I would like to say for the water system, because our trigger point here for exceeding the firm capacity is happening so soon, 2025, before, the Bobcat Ridge and Caribou Ridge expansions are planned for. Once you expand to meet this first trigger point, these points move farther down the line. So everything gets reshifted because your capacity on your water treatment plant, it's increased.
And I do think the water is a much bigger concern in the near term here, only because if one of your units, let's just say one of your units was out of service for a prolonged period of time, I mean, you're barely making kind of your average production. Whereas the peak day, if it's, July 4th and everyone's using a lot of water and you had one system out, you couldn't go for multiple days with that unit down. So it's something that to sleep at night, you want that redundancy. And that's why in a perfect world, your plant can produce the closer to the peak capacity or the peak demand, or ideally the peak demand, and not solely rely on your storage in the distribution system. So
And then
go ahead,
the
John.
nice part about doing this rate study in conjunction with the capital improvement plan is obviously for every tap you bring online, you're collecting tap fees that will help pay for those improvements. And when we get into the rate study side, Rob Tellis will be able to build some models that will look at the tap fee collection versus the expansion and how many taps need to be brought online to be able to offset some of those costs. So it's really a good exercise to look at both. Growth is not bad as long as growth pays for itself at times, and how many taps do we need to be able to bring on before we can afford that versus build it and they will come philosophy. So it's hard to say when that trigger point hits with the financial side, but we'll have some of those answers once we complete the rate study piece.
Sweet. The last question I had is in regards to the improvements of the sewer facilities and the lift station on Big Springs. Is all that work computed in with the need to expand the wastewater treatment, or if that happened, would we be looking at additional expansion beyond the one projected here to incorporate those 190 homes or whatever, however many it was projected?
This I might even call in Chris, because we had it in, we took it out, we had it in, and I think it would be responsible to think about Big Springs if you're expanding your wastewater treatment facility. You would want to include customers that you currently serve with water. I'm trying to pull up the table really quick.
It seems like it was included, but it's nowhere on our priorities because we recognize the challenges involved with providing sewage services up.
Right, and that's, I think it was 160 homes in Big Springs-ish, and then 30 in other water served areas that are not currently sewered.
I believe it was included.
Yeah, I guess we just took the project out.
Yeah, what was not included was the expansion of the collection system. I think we feel that that's more of a neighborhood burden, and to look at funding to offset the cost of installing infrastructure. But if we were to follow that plan right there, then at 2025 or whenever it is when we project possibly add in a phase in Big Springs, then there would be a jump of that many houses. That's where.
Okay, so those are my main questions, just trying to process the big picture here. Awesome job. Thank you guys for all this information, and I think it's, like you have mentioned, the rate study is going to really help provide a lot greater lens on moving forward in the future. So thank you all.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really glad we're doing this at the same time as the rate study and making them work together. That's awesome. Tanya, did you have any questions?
Yeah. Let's see. I was wondering if the expansion of the water production, you said it was like in 25, we were going to be needing to expand that. We'd be reaching our capacity of giving out water to people. Is that in the budget, that expansion of the plant then?
I hope so in 2024 or 25.
Yeah, so that's
right. And then even near term, the replacing of the existing membranes and basically expanding the existing skids, right, Janet?
Yeah. So the skids, as they stand right now, they have room for additional cartridges. So it wouldn't take adding a third membrane train to gain a little bit more capacity. So this project that we have as a priority here, number 2, the water treatment membrane replacement and addition, that is going to buy you a little bit more capacity. However, we have the big water treatment plant expansion addition targeted for 2025, and that will be when a third train would go into production.
And how long will that sustain us then? Like in a few years?
Yeah, exactly. Another 20 years.
Yeah,
Oh, 20 years.
Yeah.
20, right.
That's pretty good. And I'm just curious why, when you look at the big springs throughout different things, freezing, sewage, and that, it's got a lot of big numbers in different years. Why isn't that in the budget?
Yeah, so
Do you want me to speak to that? So
Sure.
this is Chris. We thought that because it's neighborhood specific, Tanya, that didn't seem to make sense to burden all the ratepayers to add collection system to Big Springs Drive and raise rates for that. And that staff has been trying to look at other avenues, potentially an improvement district or something along that line where we could target the neighborhood to expand the collection system.
But I mean, it's like millions of dollars. Is there
And
going to be
just
the
to
option to
clarify-
opt out for people in the neighborhood?
No, and I do want to clarify that the Big Springs, the specific pipeline freezing prevention project, it is part
That's
of the
like
overall town budget.
Oh, okay.
Because that is something that, pipes weren't originally installed at the right depth. So that it is part of the overall town budget. So
Oh, so that's going to be fixed. in a
Yeah.
few
yeah, I
so-
think mostly on the sanitary sewer side of things, because
Right.
since it's not sewered, you're sewering an entire almost community that a lot of people have on-site wastewater systems. I mean, they all
Right,
do.
so the burden is going to fall onto the residents then for those $1 million?
Well, it's a nuanced discussion, because if you're in Big Springs, and your existing treatment system is about to fail, you're going to want to figure out a way as a community to get tied into the town.
Maybe.
If you just
maybe
put in
not.
if you just put in a brand new one, you probably don't have a big reason to want to tie into the town.
I think,
but it is.
Yeah, this is the discussion. This is a really big discussion for
Well,
another
I'm
time.
just
We're
trying
not
to wrap
tackling-
my head around it.
Yeah.
Fine, I don't have any more questions then.
Yeah. Other trustees, I think that was everyone. Anyone have any final questions? I think we're going to be chewing on this report and thinking it through for a little while, and may come back to you with some other questions as we wrap our head around it, and certainly in the coming years as we look at how to actually plan and budget for these improvements.
Yeah, please do. It's definitely a living document. It's very comprehensive. So we'll be here to answer any questions as they come along.
Yeah, send them through to Karen and Chris, and happy to clarify anything in the future, as well as we will listen in when Rothtellis does their work, and we do interface with them as they kind of put their financial model together. So thank you for the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you all so much for the presentation. And yeah, we'll be talking to you again very soon, I'm sure. All right, Miranda is taking back over.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And we are going to move into our action items for this evening, beginning with a consideration of an exemption of lot line dissolution and replat. Miranda, would you give us the overview on this one?
Yes. So before you tonight is an application made by Lisa Dell, who's the agent for 46 Pinecliff LLC. As Mayor Larson indicated, it's for an exemption from completing a lot line dissolution and a replat for 46 Pinecliff Trail. In December, Lee had reached out to town regarding Lot 76 and explained that at some point in time, without town approval, the lot was split via deed, where there was a written part for the north half and the south half. He had requested at the time that we town file a correction deed to bring both the lots back into conformity. However, town code doesn't specify that as a process for us. Therefore, it was recommended that this come before the Board of Trustees and the Planning Commission. The application was reviewed by the Planning Commission in January, and they unanimously approved that the application move forward to the Board of Trustees tonight. So just a couple kind of logistical pieces on this. So the split was ultimately a violation of the Nederland Municipal Code when it was done through the deed, because it should have come before us and been approved by the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees. It should also be noted that with that split, the lots are not in compliance with zoning code because they're not sufficient lot sizes in the Big Springs area. Both the north and the south lots are owned by the same owner, and we do feel that it is in the town's best interest to work on remedying this situation because the owners have an interest to build on the full lot 76. So the question before the board tonight is, do you approve resolution 2021-04, which approves the merger of parcel A and B, the north and south lot of lot 76 in the Big Springs second filing subdivision? And we do have Lee Stadell here tonight, so I'm going to pass it over to him to add anything else. Lee? Lee, are you there? You're muted if you are. Okay, you may not be there.
Just to clarify, so the Planning Commission unanimously said we need to just fix this. This is cleaning something up, sort of just fixing an error that occurred some point in the past.
Yep.
And allowing this lot to remain as a single lot.
Yes,
right?
and our town attorney had reached out to Boulder County's attorney, and it was recommended that doing the resolution to approve the merger was the way to go to correct this error.
Okay. Open this up. Trustees have any questions for town staff on this? And we'll begin with Tanya this time. Trustee Corvallin? Trustee Danforth, do you have any questions? Oh, there you go, Tanya. There. All right.
No, I don't have any questions. I mean, this seems very straightforward, that there was an error that was made that wasn't legal, and we're just trying to clean it up and make sure the documentation is correct. So, I don't have any questions about this, and I would move to approve resolution 2020-04 and approving the mergers of parcels A and B.
Can we pause that movement because we haven't taken public comment yet?
Oh, sure.
Just to give a chance here, kind of pass through this.
Chris?
Trustee Taylor, yes.
This is Lee. I finally figured out how to unmute myself.
Welcome back, Lee. Did you have something you want to add on this? I think it sounds like it's a fairly straightforward correction.
It is. I think that it's in the town's best interest, and I'm here basically to answer any questions the trustees might have.
Awesome. Thank you, Lee. Trustee Taylor, any questions?
No, the write-up seemed perfectly reasonable. Something got broken, and we just fixed it up. My wife's family would say, if you don't know who to blame, then the problem can't be solved. But it's okay. We don't need to know who to blame. This is broken, and this seems like a fairly straightforward fix.
Indeed. All right. Mayor Pro Tem Baumover.
I got no questions on Trustee Taylor's comments.
Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Nothing from me.
All right. I don't have any either. This, like I said, it's well documented in the packet and seems a straightforward fix. So I'm going to throw this open to anyone from the public who would like to comment on this action item. Now would be your chance. Catch my attention in some way, and you can have 3 minutes of floor time. Not seeing or hearing any. I will bring this back to the board for any final comments, or if Trustee Danforth would like to make that motion again now.
Sure. I'd like to make the motion to approve resolution 2021-04, approving the merger of parcels A and B of lot 76 in the Big Springs second filing subdivision.
This is Trustee Taylor. I second.
Motion and a second. Miranda.
Trustee Danforth.
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes.
Mayor Larson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover,
Yes.
Trustee Taylor,
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin.
Yes.
So passed. Thank you, Lee, for bringing this to our attention, and glad we could get this fixed as quickly and easily as we did.
Thank you so much. I think this is a good model for other issues that come up in the town to use to try to fix things that got a little strange in the past, and I know there's quite a few of them.
It wouldn't be Nederland if that weren't the case, would it?
No.
All right. Thanks, Lee.
Thank you.
We will move on now to the second action item, which is the draft plan of our project, our TIP project. And I believe this one will be introduced by our Public Works Manager, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so last month I brought the project in front of you. For some of you, for your first time. For others, you may have seen it multiple times. And fundamentally, it really hasn't changed much since last month. And I'll pull it up here. There were a couple changes. The direction I got from you guys last month was to get more feedback, particularly when it comes down to changing the flow of traffic and the position of the sidewalk by Ned's, for example. So let me pull it up. Hold on a sec. Hold on.
That's a new looking view.
Yeah, I got too many windows open, so let me close a couple. See what happens. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing, and then I'm gonna reshare. Oh, sorry. This is the definition of insanity, I think. This is the first time this has happened to me.
That looks good. I think I've seen the whole thing.
Can you see the whole thing?
Yeah, we can now on that view.
Oh, okay. All right. I can't. But okay. Okay. I see it now.
Memory test.
Okay,
Memory
got
test
it.
time.
Thank you for your patience. So again, like I said, it hasn't changed fundamentally. It is essentially sidewalk from RTD to 119 and by Town Hall, and then again on Jefferson Street. So I have reached out to, I had an article in the Mountaineer. I did a podcast last week on the project to try to garner more input. I also met with the property owner of Ned's because that was kind of in limbo. And so I think what I'll do is I'll start there, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So you see here at Ned's, the property owner had decided he wants to reclaim his land and have the town sidewalk be in the town's right of way. So that's the newest development here. So in this picture, you see there's a sidewalk right at the edge of the bold dark line there, which is the property line. Now this view has been presented in all previous views too. It wasn't the desirable view. Initially, the DDA and others wanted the town to work with the owner to see if we could come up with a solution to keep the sidewalk on his property and still retain some parking there. But having reflected on it, the owner really wants to reclaim his property. And so, so this is the result of that. So this is one change that's happened. see here, there's an indent here for a loading zone. And then I also have another picture here. I'll pull it up. And let me zoom in. Where we actually straighten the sidewalk. And either choice is fine. I think having spoken with town staff, they like having the indent there. It's not necessary. There is also potential for parallel parking potentially here. Again, though, that's more or less striping, and that's something we could try out in the future. But again, essentially, it's a sidewalk on the edge of the town's right of way. I've also met with the owner of the property where the bakery is at, and that owner is actually has become kind of excited about the project, and he wants to add bike racks and stuff over here on his little section of land. It happens to be a little bit of green space, a little garden that he has over there. So he's actually pretty excited about it. So that's one change. And then the other change, now you see over here by the RTD, this was the original concept that I presented at every meeting and every advisory board meeting since the beginning, which is essentially a crosswalk right at the intersection of Jackson Street and West First Street, cross the street and head north on the sidewalk on the west side of Jackson Street. And then we've met with RTD, and they have chosen this route into their property as their ideal route. But I would like to show you also this version. And the reason why I want to show you this is, well, first of all, the change here is the sidewalk now is on the east side of Jackson Street. And then the crossing is kind of in the middle of Jackson. So intuitively, you generally cross at the intersection. But we've presented this option here because looking at the big picture, the town had received funding for reconstructing the sidewalk up here where my hand is on the north side of Highway 72, the dirt sidewalk that exists up there. And then right here where my hand is the library crosswalk, and we received funds to improve that. Whether it's signalized or some traffic calming is not known yet because we're still only in the sort of administrative IGA phase with CDOT. And then when we get into design phase, that's when I'll come back to you guys and we'll talk about it more. But the reason why that the sidewalk is landed here on the east side of Jackson is that it lines up nicely with the crosswalk and has a nice flow if we were to extend the sidewalk and have a nice clean connection to RTD, as opposed to what exists right now, which is sort of an at-grade sidewalk on the west side of Jackson. It's not very functional. RTD had asked us to not put a crosswalk in front of their driveway entrance. They have the crosswalk that they prefer, which is in the center of their lot, and it's for reasons of sight distance for their drivers. So this concept on the east side of Jackson would line up very nicely and connect well with the other sidewalks in town. So that's why we have this. Now, what I'm requesting tonight is to submit these two drawings to CDOT for what they call an FIR, a field inspection review. And it's essentially their preliminary look, their first look at the town's plan. And it's 30%. And so it's not set in stone. Like I said at the beginning, fundamentally, the project really hasn't changed much. And this sidewalk can be moved to the other side if it is not desired to put there. And the same with the indent in front of Town Hall. Even after the 30% review stage, if after receiving more feedback, that is not a desired location for the sidewalk, it can still be moved. And so with all that said, I think I've told you guys all the changes that I've made, and I'm ready to take questions. Like I said, what I'm asking tonight is to submit this plan to see. I'll take any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for keeping to work on this and chasing them down and meeting with everyone you need to meet with. You know, I personally don't have any questions. I think submitting both these two at the 30% level to get that next step, I think looks good. We don't have to tackle some of those decisions quite yet, which is good. And I appreciate that you're continuing to do outreach to the town and local businesses. So I will open this up to questions, beginning with Mayor Pro Tem Baumhofer.
You know, I didn't have any questions. The only thing I was interested in tonight was to hear about Ned's, but it sounded like Ned's was interested in reclaiming that. And so, yeah, I'm all for sending this to CDOT to continue on with this process.
All right. Trustee Danforth.
Sorry, it took me a minute to find my mute button. I appreciate all the hard work on this, Chris. It looks really good, and I'm all for submitting it.
Hey.
Trustee Corvalin.
I'm just curious, as you have it now, final draft, how many parking spaces did we end up gaining or losing? Net zero, or what was the deal at the end?
Well, the concept that you see in front of you, or I may have stopped sharing my screen.
Yeah, you did.
I did? Okay.
Yeah.
If we were to develop the parking on the West First Street, then there would be either zero or a net gain. If we don't develop parking on West First Street, there still is an opportunity to have parallel parking on the north side next to the sidewalk of West First Street, and possibly along the West First Street at Town Hall. However, it would probably still be a net loss in parking if we were not able to develop those 15 spaces on West First Street.
If you don't do that, yeah, well, yeah. So what was the final answer?
So yes, there will be a loss in spaces unless we further develop West First Street.
Is that an extra cost, or is that part of the project?
It's not part of the project. It's in parallel with the project, and it's something I'm working with the DDA to get their involvement in working towards that development.
Okay, and you have the second idea of the parking of the sidewalk making a right angle and then crossing into RTD. Is it over there? It's a Ron Mitchell empty lot that has a lot of parking of vehicles in there. How are you gonna work that out of that? There's a lot of vehicles that go in and out of there. Is there going to be a couple driveways then left vacant without a sidewalk in that corner lot? You know what I'm talking about?
I think you lost Chris. Seems to have dropped off the participant list.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're having a lot of internet issues at town facilities, which is where both Chris and myself are.
Gotcha. Okay, well, whatever. Thanks.
Well, the questions would then fall to Trustee Taylor or Coombs Ismail, but Chris is gone. So do you have questions you'd like to put out there?
And then all these meetings with Chris, so there's a chance that I can answer the question if you do have something not too complicated.
All right. Eric, do you have any questions for Karen?
I did wonder about the avenue into the RTD lot and whether or not there was going to be a crosswalk that led to the island where the bus stop actually is. Because that used to be on previous design drawings.
I do know that Chris actually talked to RTD about that, and he really will have to answer the question. I think they're actually talking about changing it a little bit because it's not ideal the way it is now, and actually changing the connection to it. So he would be the one to give that specific detail. I do know it came up though, and he did talk to RTD about it.
Yeah, it just seems as a kind of transportation project, if the sidewalk didn't actually connect to the bus stop, that would be sort of ridiculous.
All right, we'll have to get back to you with that one from Chris then, I guess, Eric. Trustee Taylor.
No, it all looks fine to me.
Okay. This is a action item because we are going to take a vote to approve or disapprove the Public Works for taking this to the next level for the FIR review or FI review. But so I want to throw this open to public comment. If anyone from the public would like to speak on this project at the 30% level where we stand tonight, now would be your opportunity. Usual way of catching our attention, and I see by video popping up, our Chris has made it back in.
Yeah, I'm back.
I have a question. Ron Mitchell here.
Ron, please identify yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Where the First Street turns to the north, and you're proposing a center of the block sidewalk, would the street still be wide enough for parking along the east side of my property? I mean, the west side of my property where the sidewalk runs, or
Yes.
would it be eliminated? Could you put angle parking in those spots as opposed to parallel parking?
We haven't explored that, Ron. I mean, I'm not sure. We have developed a concept to put parallel parking there, and can show a drawing that has parallel parking to show how many spaces would fit in that way. And obviously, we'd need to work with you on a drive entrance and stuff to access the property. So I don't know if angled parking will fit there.
All right, could we find out before you submit it to CDOT? Or at least?
Yes, I can find out before we can submit for 60% design.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ron. Anyone else from the public have questions or comments? If not, I'm going to bring this back to the board. Now we have Chris back. Eric, did you want to re-ask your question about the RTD lot?
Sure, yeah, Chris, I was just wondering, I guess on previous design drawings, there was a crosswalk that went to the island where the bus stop actually is. On this one, there didn't seem to be, and I'm just wondering if there's going to be connectivity to the actual bus stop.
Yeah, on that drawing, there actually is a crosswalk in the center of the drive aisle. And that's the crosswalk they prefer to use. They figure that if we have multiple crosswalks, it's not ideal for their driver and their sight distance. And so the way they have allowed us to enter is through an existing crosswalk that makes it over to that island. And the existing crosswalk is like a kind of a stamped concrete at grade across the driveway.
I see. Okay, thanks.
Any further questions or comments from trustees, or if anyone would like to submitting these drawings?
This is Trustee Taylor. I move that we submit these drawings to CDOT for field inspection review.
Trustee Coombs Ismail, I'll second.
Miranda, we have a motion and a second on the floor.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Taylor,
Yes.
Trustee Danforth,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover,
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin, Trustee Corvallin. Okay, I'll come back. Mayor Larson
Yes.
and Trustee Corvallin, are you there? Trustee Corvallin?
See her still on mute.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I'm sorry, I lost connection.
We're taking a vote about whether or not to submit these drawings for the field review.
Yes.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Miranda. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you again, Chris, for the work done on this, and look forward to hearing the results of the field review.
Thank you very much.
We will move forward into discussion items now, and our first is with regards to the marijuana hospitality establishments and the recommendation about opting out of allowing them. Miranda.
Yes. So when the Board of Trustees did the emergency ordinance to impose a temporary moratorium back in August, in conjunction with the Trustee Taylor, we formed a marijuana ordinance review committee that ultimately was tasked with providing a recommendation on the limits of the numbers of retail and medical marijuana stores, which the Board of Trustees voted on in December. But another part of that committee was tasked with looking into marijuana hospitality establishments, which includes mobile hospitality establishments, as well as retail marijuana hospitality and sales establishments. And so as a committee, we really dove into three options. The first was to opt in and allow marijuana hospitality establishments within Nederland. The second was to maintain a status quo and really take no formal action. In order to allow marijuana hospitality, a government has to opt in. So by kind of maintaining that status quo, it meant that the town was taking no formal action on it. Or the last one was to opt out and formally state through a resolution that marijuana hospitality establishments are not permitted in Nederland. So in your packet, you'll see that the committee really weighed out the pros and cons and ultimately voted in favor of doing an official opt-out. So before you tonight is a resolution of opting out of marijuana hospitality establishments. I do want to point out that there's an error in the resolution number. This should be resolution 2021-03. So the board tonight has a few options. This is a discussion item. So if you want to move forward, we could bring this back as an action item at the next meeting or on consent and correct that resolution number. Or the board can move it from discussion to action, but then in your motion, you would make an amendment to correct the resolution number. Are there questions about what we're speaking to do?
Miranda, could I speak?
Yes, please.
All right, very fine. So the committee was fairly diverse. It included people from a person from Boulder County Public Health, from Teens Inc., from our local constabulary, and several representatives of marijuana retailers, because we figured that they had a particular interest in this. We had several meetings, including 2 meetings where we invited in experts on the topic and asked them to help us better understand the law around marijuana hospitality establishments and also public health issues around them. By marijuana hospitality establishment, what we are meaning is any establishment where marijuana may be consumed on premises, whether you bring your own marijuana or the marijuana is purchased there, or it's a mobile marijuana establishment where you are consuming marijuana on site. We pulled together a set of pros and cons. We framed the question as, how does the hospitality establishment help Nederland? That's the key question. What is the advantage to the town of Nederland to have a consume on-site facility? And so we did pros and cons. Pro, this will help the town. Cons, this will cost the town or will present risks to the town. And everyone participated. There was a lot of good input. And we went through the pros and cons. And before we got to the point that we were going to start weighting the individual pros and cons, I asked for a sense of the group. And the sense of the group was already fairly well established at that point. The pros and cons and the discussion of the pros and cons was fairly illuminating. And in the end, we had 4 votes to opt out. That is to say, actually say 4 right now, at least, until we modify our plans, our rulings. We're not going to allow marijuana hospitality establishments to be licensed within the town. 2 folks voted to do neither, to basically passively opt out, to say we're not going to do anything, and that means we're not opted in. That was how all of this went, and I just thought I would note that I was very concerned about this. So at the end of the last meeting, I asked if there were any concerns about the process we used to come to this conclusion. And no one commented at that point. So no one objected to the process, and I'm feeling fairly comfortable that the vote and the conclusion and the recommendation is clean. So that's the background information I wanted to provide.
Thank you so much for that, Julian. Do any trustees have questions for town staff on this or comments? I'll begin with Trustee Coombs Ismail this time.
I guess my question would be, if we vote now to opt out, is there some kind of official documentation that's submitted to the state about that? Like, is this just a resolution that sits on the town of Nederland's books? Like, how does this actually work?
It would be one of our resolutions.
And we would notify the marijuana enforcement division just so they don't accept and or start on applications for hospitality. Because often applicants submit a town application and their state simultaneously.
Right. And if this were to be reversed, it could be reversed in the same manner by a resolution by the Board of Trustees.
Yes.
I think that's all the questions I have. This makes sense to me. I feel like we don't allow smoking tobacco indoors, and that smoking marijuana indoors is a similar air quality issue, and could be potentially damaging overall. And so, and there doesn't seem to be an established kind of culture of marijuana hospitality establishments like there is with alcohol consumption, which is kind of ingrained in our society in a way that is not something we're going to extricate ourselves from. And I don't feel like there's a great need to try to establish such a culture in Nederland, at least not right now.
Thank you, Eric. Trustee Corvallin.
So what's the action here to bring it up for a vote next time or in the future? Is that what we're talking about? We're not deciding right now.
So the board could move it from discussion to action because we do have an error in the resolution number. The other thought would be to bring this back either on action or consent at the next meeting.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess, I mean, I certainly don't want Nederland to become a little Amsterdam or anything. But I also don't think that one establishment would probably ruin Nederland either. So I'm not sure if I want to fully agree with this or not because of the.
That's an opportunity. If we choose to move, or if the board votes to move forward on this, I would say we don't. This is not an emergency thing. So let's not put bringing it as a vote tonight onto the table. let's have this, if the board chooses to move forward, let's have it move forward as an action item at a future at the next meeting. So we have a chance to go out and let's talk to people. Let's talk to the community and find out, make sure that everyone understands that we're making this action and not trying to push it through tonight. So it's an opportunity to talk to more people about it as well.
Yeah, I think so.
A number of issues came up during the discussion, and among one of the issues that I think persuaded my vote was the issue that there are situations wherein taking, especially a naive user, consuming marijuana, especially if they've been somewhere else and also consumed alcohol, may encounter a delayed reaction. And that may be a delayed reaction that the bud tender may not be able to detect. And we have really windy roads going out of here.
No,
That
that
was
is
kind of
very
one of the
true.
concerns I had. That was one of the concerns I had, really windy roads.
Yeah, well, I hear
Yeah.
your point about the naive user, because users will, yeah.
Somebody visits Maryland to try marijuana.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. Yeah, they're like, they don't know what they're doing. They had a few beers and then, green out. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah, but I do agree with the mayor that we should put this out so that the public can comment on it and we can read some more pros and cons from the public. But
Absolutely.
you're right about the naive person and our youth too, of course. Although, of course, there'll probably be an age limit on that, but yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Tanya. Trustee Danforth?
Yeah, I think, I wouldn't personally want to see a place where people are going to consume it for a variety of reasons. Some of those being outlined in the public comment about air quality and safety. And also with what Julian said, that, the delayed effects and coming out of Nederland and possibly driving very dangerous roads seems like a safety hazard to me. The only part of this that I don't think I would have a problem with is the mobile units, the delivery, so that, looking at the pros and cons of that is that it's moving the consumption and the purchasing of it and additional storefronts out of the public view. So, I'm not sure if there's a way to pick it apart and say, okay, well, we'll allow only mobile units, but we don't want to have a premise, a building designated for the consumption. I don't know if we can do that or not.
Trustee Danforth, let me clarify a little bit. The topic of marijuana delivery came up a few times in these meetings, but marijuana delivery was not part of this group's charter. And so there's nothing here about marijuana delivery. What we're discussing is party buses, where people are smoking marijuana while the bus drives. We're saying we're not going to license a party bus in Nederland, but there's nothing we can do to keep a party bus from driving through Nederland. We're going to have to deal with that no matter what, if that party bus is licensed elsewhere. And there are certain things we can do to restrict the actions of that party bus within Nederland, but essentially what we're saying is we are opting out of any place, fixed or mobile, wherein people may consume marijuana.
And Trustee Danforth, delivery is a separate license type. So if the Board of Trustees is interested in the committee looking into kind of the pros and cons of that, the committee is aware that we may reform to look at just delivery as a separate piece.
Okay. So got it. I appreciate that clarification on that. So thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Baumhofer.
I had no questions. It's looking good, and I don't really have any concerns. It seems like we'll be continuing to address marijuana-related establishments as things develop over the next decade or so, federally and across the whole country. So this looks great for now.
All right. And I believe that's all the trustees, and I'm hearing, generally speaking, the trustees are in favor of bringing this back as an action item in the future so we can gather more input. But as a discussion item, I will throw the floor open to the floor and the public now. If anyone would like to provide some of that input now, you of course, can email us or wait till the meeting where it'll be an action item. But if anyone would like to speak on this matter now, please do.
Ron Mitchell here.
Ron, please.
This was tried at 154 Highway 72 for 2 or 3 years. It was a miserable failure. It was a nuisance in the community, and I am adamant that I am encouraging you to opt out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. All right, I'm seeing some hands up here. And first up is Gretchen Smith.
Hi, all. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please just identify yourself and let us know if you live here in town or not.
All right. My name is Gretchen Smith. I don't live in town. I am a program specialist with the Tobacco Education and Prevention Partnership at Boulder County Public Health. Of course, here to speak on the proposed resolution on marijuana hospitality establishments. As a program, we support the recommendation made by the Marijuana Ordinance Review Committee to opt out of allowing these establishments in Nederland. We're concerned about marijuana hospitality establishments because it would mean a step back in smoke-free protections in Boulder County. Though more research is needed on the long-term health implications of secondhand marijuana exposure, there is evidence that shows that secondhand marijuana smoke contains fine particulate matter, which has adverse health consequences, and evidence to indicate that secondhand marijuana smoke has many of the same chemicals as tobacco smoke. Allowing marijuana smoking and vaping in an indoor workplace can have potentially negative health implications on employees and leave them unprotected from exposure. We appreciate that you're considering the health implications that secondhand smoke and vaping aerosol will have on employees and the public. Thank you for prioritizing the health and safety of the residents of Nederland. We applaud that you're having this discussion and looking at opting out of allowing marijuana hospitality establishments in Nederland. Thank you for your time and commitment to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Ben Goldsmith.
Hi.
There we go.
So, hi there. I want to speak in support of.
Just again, identify
yes.
yourself for the record.
Ben
Thank you.
Goldsmith. Ben Goldsmith. I live at 496 Spring Street in Old Town here in Nederland, and I work in prevention, youth prevention in Nederland as well. And speaking in support of the proposal to formally opt out of hospitality licensing in Nederland. And I'm doing so, as I mentioned, I come from doing prevention work that actually brought me to the task force itself. But I think right now I just speak as a parent here, someone who has a partner and a child in Nederland. And I want to preface this making really clear, like I think, often there's a reaction to concerns about this kind of thing that presume or there's an impression that it has something to do with stigma or some sort of moral judgment, which is not at all what it is. Again, we worked with local dispensaries on this task force, responsible members of this, the businesses in this community who also came to this conclusion, more or less. My biggest concern as a parent and as someone who's a partner here is the very lax state regulations, the really large single serving size, the lack of definition for what proper ventilation is, the experiences in other places with odor complaints that have gone to the point of lawsuits, the comments of our marshal that suggested that we might need to hire another law enforcement officer. And all of those things would require us to do local licensing in Nederland in order to actually have regulations that would keep us safe. And that would cost a lot, more than these businesses would add to Nederland, which maybe at most would be 1 or 2 $14 an hour bud tending jobs. And the real fear for me, again, it's not, we're not in Toronto, we're not in Amsterdam, we're not somewhere where, our large tourist population in peak season just kind of stumbles home to their or stumbles to their hotel room, hops in an Uber, gets on a tram. For the most part, they're going to be getting into cars and going down one of our canyons. And I'd really rather not have someone who's adjusting to altitude, having delayed effects from large cannabis serving sizes, and possibly I've been drinking as well, going down the canyon when my partner is driving up the canyon. I don't think any of us do. So again, Nederland isn't, we're just not geographically right for that kind of thing. We don't have the infrastructure or the resources to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Next hand up I see is Aubrey Garner.
Hi there, thank you. Yes, my name is Aubrey. I am not a resident in Nederland, but I do live there part-time. I also work full-time at Teens Inc., working in youth development. And I would definitely like to be in favor of opting out, please. Lots of various reasons, and I'm happy to see as well that potentially this could be opened back up for more public comment, because working with youth, I know they as well have opinions. And, I know that my fellow staff members and other people in the community would also really appreciate having more to say about this. But personally, yes, I would like to opt out. Seeing that it's a issue already with the youth in our community, trying to create situations where risk management is placed and trying to provide alternatives, and kind of opt out of normalizing it. I think opting for hospitality in that industry would kind of be wrecking part of that work that's going on. Not going along with any stigmatism or any judgment or anything, just generally like the work that's trying to be placed in avoiding substance abuse in our youth in the community. There's a lot of work being done towards that, and normalizing it and having people coming in, tourists being able to access that. And as well as Ben mentioned, safety of transportation afterwards, and just making potentially a very small, wonderful mountain town with a small population normalized. I would rather opt out of that. So I would love to comment more and prepare more, but I think it would be great to open that up. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Aubrey. Allison Bailey.
Allison Bailey. I am not a resident of Nederland. I'm the Community Substance Abuse Prevention Program Manager at Boulder County Public Health, and I had the opportunity to participate in the Marijuana Ordinance Review Committee that Trustee Taylor convened, and really appreciated being part of the dialogue with that group. Boulder County Public Health is in full support of Nederland's proposed resolution to opt out of marijuana hospitality establishments. Adopting a resolution to opt out will protect employees from exposure to secondhand smoke, keep Nederland's streets and highways safe from patrons driving under the influence of cannabis, and maintain Nederland as a community where youth can thrive. Opting out will also allow the existing marijuana businesses to continue to operate responsibly. Thank you to the town of Nederland for your commitment to the health and safety of your residents and tourists in the larger Boulder County community by considering opting out of marijuana hospitality establishments. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. I believe that is all the hands I see up. Give another chance here for anyone who wants to speak. We'll bring it back to the board for any last comments, thoughts. I think as I said, I think it's clear that there's a number on the board interest in bringing this forward as an action item at our next meeting. So otherwise, if that does not meet with the board's interests, let me know. Anyone?
Mayor Larson, there's a few other things that town staff would like the board's feedback on. So is it okay to add them in here for you to discuss?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so specifically we're looking, since Trustee Danforth brought it up, if the board would like the marijuana ordinance review committee to reconvene about mobile delivery. That's question one. We're also looking for the board to give a nod for approval for town staff to work with Trustee Taylor on regarding the licenses. When the board voted to limit licensures to 4 locations, we still need to discuss how to handle an available license, and we'd like to work directly with Trustee Taylor on that, as well as a nod for approval from the board for Attorney Madsen to work on the other code updates that are needed in order to reference state law and align our code with the Colorado Revised Statute. So we're looking for kind of direction on those 3 items.
So I may be mishearing, but I think Miranda is volunteering me for something.
I am. Yep.
I was going to ask, did you volunteer for this in advance, Julian, or is this a surprise?
Miranda keeps volunteering me for these things.
True, I do.
This is the problem, Julian. When you do such a good job the first couple times out of the gate, now we're just going to be turning to you every time.
Yep.
All right, so you're looking for a nod of 4 with regards to sort of continuing the work of the marijuana board with Trustee Taylor on the issues of licenses, on the issue of bringing state code up to snuff on state code, as well as some of the is it just the mobile or just the delivery, or is there additional classes?
Well, we're also working with the Planning Commission on some zoning limitations related to cultivation, product manufacturing, and testing. So we also plan to kind of wrap all 3 or 4 components together when we bring this back to the board. That's already in the works. So it really would just be the mobile licenses, the mobile delivery, if the board wants us to work on that.
Okay, so Miranda, I'm having a little trouble fully understanding it. So when we talk about mobile delivery, we're really just talking about delivery.
Correct.
Right? We're not talking about mobile lounges.
We're just talking about the ability, to deliver.
By bicycle or motorcycle or car to a domicile where it will be consumed at that domicile. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about delivery. And yes, that was brought up in the meeting, but that was not part of our charter at that time. Yes. Okay, never mind. Now that it's clarified, please proceed, Miranda.
Yeah, so I'll just repeat this one more time. So we're looking for the board. Oh, go ahead.
I just want a little further clarification on the delivery. Are we speaking of delivery by a pre-existing recreational or medical facility? So, you know, one of the stores in town already then can take the product that they are personally selling to the end user, or are we talking about third-party delivery, like, you know, Uber Eats for weed? Is it differentiation?
Yeah, that's a great question. It would be for the committee to really look into, because if you allow delivery, you can structure it where it's just allowing current establishments to deliver, or allowing third-party vendors to come up here and do the delivery for them. So kind of like the Uber Eats type thing. It'll be something for the committee to want to look into both aspects.
Okay, I just wanted to make clear that there are, you know, I want to make sure that we're recognizing that there is some variability, some differences within there about roles. So, okay, so go ahead and repeat now.
Okay, so we're looking for a nod of 4 from the Board of Trustees to move forward on working on the delivery with the review committee, as well as for town staff to work directly with Trustee Taylor on how to handle the available licenses for retail and medical marijuana stores, and to work with Attorney Madsen on the code updates that are needed to align our code with Colorado Revised Statute.
Very good. I think that sounds great. I will give a nod of 4 myself, and then I will call on others just to either comment on it or please say that you agree, beginning with Trustee Taylor, since you're the one who seems to be getting the work.
I'm apparently the one doing the work. So yeah, I've never turned down a voluntold from Miranda yet. So sure. I would note though that Miranda has already thanked the committee, and I think most people thought that was our last meeting. So Miranda, I'm going to leave it to you to patch it up with the people who are going to be called back to this meeting.
Yeah.
All right, Trustee Danforth.
Yes, I think it all sounds good to move forward with this.
Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover.
I'm in agreement. I got a nod.
Okay, Trustee Corvallin
Yeah.
and Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Go get him, Julian.
All right, I think you have your staff has their direction. Julian has the marching orders. And yeah, we'll bring that ordinance with regards to the consumption establishments back at probably the next meeting, unless that one is already fully booked. But for those who are interested in the issue, in the matter, keep an eye on our agendas, and it'll either be in 2 or 4 weeks. All right, moving forward into our second discussion item, which is regarding the right-of-way question that had come up a few weeks ago. And I believe this one is going to be introduced by our town attorney, Jennifer Madsen.
Good evening, Mayor, Trustees. This, as the Mayor mentioned, this was an item that was discussed at the January 19th meeting regarding bringing forward an ordinance to require encroachment licenses for adjacent properties that occupy or encroach on town property. So what I've done and what you have in your packet tonight is a draft ordinance. The ordinance encompasses a couple of other items in addition to that encroachment license piece. And those other items are typically found in other municipal codes and are related to the encroachment. But what those other sections of this ordinance include are temporary occupations of town right-of-way. So, temporary occupation of the right-of-way for construction or storage material. And what these particular sections in the ordinance do are make it unlawful for people to temporarily occupy the right-of-way, and would give town staff some authority to contact those people, ask for voluntary compliance, let them know they're violating an ordinance, and hopefully then you would get the person to remove their temporary supplies or to stop that occupation. Related to the encroachment, the town clerk would handle those licenses. If there were any issue with the license, the ordinance provides an appeal process, and that person would be able to appeal the town clerk's decision to the town administrator. So it's pretty straightforward in the packet, the draft ordinance, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, let's throw this open to board questions on this proposed ordinance. Tanya, any questions on it?
No.
Okay, Lindsay?
Can you come back to me?
Sure. Jonathan Baumhover.
I don't particularly have any questions. We're basically just, right now we don't have a tool even to really deal with these encroachments on our right-of-way and public lands, correct? So this would provide a tool. It wouldn't necessarily mean that we start going door to door and addressing these encroachments. It would just provide an actual framework that town staff would be able to use and know what to do in situations which have come up. Is that correct, Jennifer?
That is correct. I think that there is some desire in the downtown area to go door to door to correct the encroachments and really to memorialize the responsibilities between the town and the property owner that's encroaching on town right of way. So, and Miranda maybe can speak to that in terms of that wish. But I understand that other areas of town that wouldn't happen, maybe residential areas.
Correct. Yeah, we do have an interest in the central business district. Specifically, a lot of those, the businesses and working with the landowners or the property owners on the south side. As Jennifer said, just to ensure that we have the responsibilities documented. So the plan would be for that area, for town to reach out to these property owners and to work through this, the agreements with them.
Okay, that gives me a little bit better clarification. It's really to have documentation and delineate roles, responsibility, and actually just clean up so everybody knows what's going on and can project that into the future. So I don't really have any questions. Thanks for all the work on this, Miranda and Jennifer.
Trustee Cosmail.
Yeah, my only concern is about the application fee. And sorry, you have to remind me what section 4 says about that, because that's what's referenced. And does that in? I've never read that particular part of Net Town Code. So how would that application fee be determined?
That's determined by the Board of Trustees. It's determined in a resolution where you adopt a fee schedule, and typically that's done November, December timeframe when you adopt the budget.
Yeah, I just got that section up just right now, and I see that it's all there. I guess my concern would be that I feel like it makes sense to assess an application fee for properties that might newly encroach upon town property, since we, from the moment that this is passed, but that historical encroachments, it would feel like maybe the application fee would be a bit unfair to assess, just because it is historically been like that, and it's not necessarily the current property owner's fault that it is like that. So I wonder what folks think about the application fee and whether or not we should be charging for these applications for properties that have historically been encroaching on town property through no real fault of the owners.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So definitely, so I'm glad you pointed that out, and I would agree with you that it seems more the purpose of doing this is to clean things up, and it's not try to put any more undue burden on these property owners than having to deal with more town and paperwork.
One thing that I would like to just mention here, and I think this is helpful in terms of the fact that it's discussion item tonight. If there's desire to bring it back to an action item, I think it would be helpful to get information from town staff in terms of, what you would want with this encroachment license is some sort of documentation as to what the specific encroachment is. And that's, I think, the piece of the application that might be tricky and could, there could be an expense associated with that. But maybe that's something that town staff could work on gathering.
Yeah, I think that's something we
figuring that piece out.
That sounds like something we definitely want to have a little more grasp on prior to this becoming an item, for sure. Trustee Taylor, did you have questions?
Yeah, I was going to agree that I think this is certainly a case that should not be applied ex post facto if we can avoid that. It certainly seems that people who are currently already in residence with business licenses that are not that where nothing has changed for them, I would see this more as something where we would inform them of this new code addition and help them to understand that it is now documented. And I think, so I'm agreeing that we should try to avoid charging people for having this, because we came up with this new set of regulations. I did have one concern about this, and it related to the process for addressing a conflict. And I think that we introduce a conflict of interest if the appeals process goes from town clerk to town administrator. I think that there is a relationship there that should be maintained, and that there would be inevitable biases that we would like to avoid. And so I'm wondering if we couldn't change that appeals process to move across departments. In other words, perhaps have the town clerk issue the initial decision and then appeal to perhaps the planning commission, perhaps the BOT, I don't know, some other group, but a group outside of immediate town staff. That would be my request, that this appeals process not be across two people who are working closely together. So that's my primary concern.
Trustee Danforth, come back to you.
Yeah, sorry. When I was looking at the documents, I got a little confused because the agenda that I clicked on said 8:14, but everything else says 8:15. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of town staff that there's that 8:14, 8:15 issue. But anyways, I think this is a really good idea to have the encroachments kind of documented on paper. And while I was distracted looking at the ordinance, did we discuss, the people who are currently encroaching on town property, are we just going to surprise them with a bill, for applying for this license for the encroachment, or do we just grandfather them in and say, well, we understand it's been this way for a long time, but here's a piece of paper that's going to document it?
I think that while you were looking around at the ordinance, that's will be part of the discussion if this is brought back for an action item. It sounds like there are several other trustees who support your viewpoint.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
All right, and I think I believe that was all trustees, and they managed to. The one concern I had was with regards to, same thing other people brought up is, not putting the onus onto the business owners or the property owners for something that may have occurred long before they were even paying attention to this. So it sounds like that's a matter we'll talk about, and when this does come back as an action item. I want to open this up to see if there's any public comment on it. If anyone from the public would like to weigh in to give us some more thoughts, things we should be considering as we work on this over the next few weeks before it comes as an action item, now would be your chance. Raise your hand or speak up.
It's Ron Mitchell.
Hey, Ron.
I would like to second Mr. Taylor's comments about a route of appeal. I think in many of your ordinances where there's ambiguity sometimes and that things aren't spelled out clearly, although it appears this probably will be, I think you really need to establish an independent route of appeal that has some ability to solve the problem rather than having to go immediately to court. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Anyone else? Jim Reese, I see a hand up. Oh. Jim?
Hello. So yes, this is my name's Jim Reese. So I live at 66 Barker Road in Nederland, Colorado, and I just wondered if the intent, as I'm listening to this and reading through this, if there might be some intent on the town staff to start to clean up some of these things that have been historic for property owners. That it's just always been that way, and we've had the use of this right away. And I'm hearing kind of the desire to not tax these property owners, but some of it I think that, it would be a good idea to look at these on a case-by-case basis and try and negotiate a little bit with the property owners. And if that's, stuff that the public works manager, Chris, is looking to reclaim for use at a future time, you might be careful about saying we don't want to burden the property owner just because it's always been that way. It looks like an opportunity to clean up some of those issues and go forward, with an agreement with those property owners. Though I do agree that, there is such a thing as the cost of staff time to go through these applications and look them up. But if there was going to be a fee, it should definitely be reasonable. That's all I have to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? All right, we'll bring it back to the board. Jennifer, Miranda, do you guys feel that you've gotten direction, an idea of how to bring this or what further to work on before bringing this back to the board?
I would like just some clarification as to that appeal process, if there's interest from other trustees to change it and put that appeal in the hands of the Planning Commission or the Board of Trustees. One thing to mention on this is that this should really just be more an administrative type decision. It shouldn't be like a public hearing or anything like that. So it can be in front of the Planning Commission or the Board of Trustees, but it really should just be more of an administrative type appeal.
So Jennifer, my concern is that the appeal needs to be the reason that the appeal shouldn't be managed by two people who work closely together on a regular basis is just because I believe it introduces at least the appearance of bias. And that's why I think it should, if there is an appeal, I mean, I have absolute trust in Miranda and Karen, and I suspect that for the most part, their decisions are going to be seen as reasonable. But if it has to be appealed, I think it needs to be appealed to a group or a person that doesn't work directly with Miranda or Karen. And I brought up the Planning Commission just as something, just as an initial thought. It may be it may be a different person or a different group, but that's my concern is the possibility of the appearance of bias.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Other trustees, or is this something we can kind of chew on and get back to you? Or do you need, I don't want this to be put in the position of making a decision tonight on it without having a chance to think about it more clearly as to whether it should remain within town hall or go to a board, for example. Is there a way that we can bring this as an action item and have the chance to talk amongst ourselves and think about the potential appeal process?
Certainly. Even if it's brought as an action item, we can always amend the ordinance and change through the amendment, change who that person is or group. So it doesn't need to be finalized tonight.
So Jennifer, help me to understand this a little bit. Isn't this kind of appeal the sort of thing that would be in the standard purview of a quasi-judicial review? No, it would not. Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, really, we're talking about private property owners who are taking up town's property, which we could in fact tell those people they can't be on town property and they need to move their, I mean, with structures, it's difficult. If it's not a structure, it's not as difficult, but it's not quasi judicial.
Okay, but we do have we have agreements with these people already that specify certain rules around their use of town property. Am I understanding that correctly? Or,
no,
there's nothing written down at all. This is all just
we
so this
would.
is just, they're there and we're just letting them.
It's really a case by case basis the way that this has been handled, and only recently have, at least that's my understanding, is only recently through maybe special review use applications are we taking steps to document that the private property owner is occupying town property. So it's just recent.
Okay.
I think it's known that many private property owners are occupying town property, but it's not documented, and it's, you know, there's no discussion as to who has responsibilities for maintaining the structures, who has liability for different issues. So that's what we're really trying to fix.
Okay.
Could you, this is Tanya, could you provide us a map of the town in showing the encroachment over the buildings so that we can get a better idea of what we're talking about? Just like an overlap?
So when we bring this back as an action item, Trustee Corvallin, that is the intention, is that staff will provide a map of the properties we have identified as appearing to be on town right away. I think in terms of solidifying those properties, we'll obviously want to make sure that, you know, there may be a need to involve kind of surveyors. And I think we can give you a preliminary idea of how many properties we're looking at, both residential
and like a map of it. Are there any instances of the opposite happening where town blocks are on private property?
I think that with the sidewalk and nets.
Well, yeah, is that common? Like, I feel like we should have it go both ways, maybe when we're mapping it, maybe if it's possible, just to get an idea of what the real map is over the town.
I don't know if the other way is common. So, but that's something that
we'll
can be
get a map at least
as well.
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, as we're finishing that, Trustee Corvallin, with Cynthia, we can see if that's something we can also highlight on a map.
I'm just curious how big of an issue this really is throughout town, just in the central business district or whatever, you know.
I wonder, I know that we're thinking about properties that already encroach on town property, but I'm also just thinking in terms of the future, and if there are encroachments that do happen with structures built or whatever it might be, or we discover that we really need something, a piece of property for some reason that someone has encroached upon historically, that maybe, well, I guess I wonder what the thinking is of making these applications to the town clerk. Like, why don't we simply make the application to the planning commission right off the bat?
So I think it was, again, Attorney Madsen, the thought was that it would be handled administratively, and so that's why it would be handled amongst the town staff. I think obviously the Board of Trustees can make the recommendation if your preference would see this run like a normal kind of planning and zoning application. It could be done so. I think the acknowledgement of that is just the delay. The planning commission only meets 12 times a year, whereas town staff are working every day. So, but it is something for the board to consider if that's a route you want to go.
Yeah, I can't imagine that there would be emergency encroachment applications that would ever come about. And so I wonder if there's any harm in it taking a bit longer for them to be approved. And in fact, maybe they could be approved in batches, at planning commission meetings in terms of these properties that already encroach that we're trying to kind of clean up, that it could be done all at once.
I think that the thought of having town staff approve these is it's more of an administrative function. There isn't really discretion or there are not there wouldn't be necessarily conditions associated with it or different types of agreement. It's going to be pretty much a boilerplate agreement that would memorialize the encroachment and then the different responsibilities. So the administrative approval is typically how something like this is done.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that gives me pause about that is this idea of appealing, and that the appeals process does seem to have these sort of, criteria and evaluative sort of measures that one might take to determine whether or not the appeal should stand. And so just because that process exists makes me feel like it should just go straight to the planning commission, or maybe there just should be no appeal.
And we can do that too. There does not need to be an appeal.
Jennifer, have you thought, I mean, in the back of your mind while you were writing this, you must have been thinking about this. What sorts of objections could you imagine if it is boilerplate? I mean, was that just you being extra cautious? I mean, I was imagining, so when Trustee Coombs-Ismail was talking about how there would be no emergencies, I was suddenly imagining giant buildings on private property slowly creeping forward onto town land. Yeah, probably not going to be happening. So, yeah, so I think no emergencies are going to arise here. But my question to you, Jennifer, is what possible objections were you thinking about when you were thinking through that appeals clause?
So I think that where the appeal comes into place is if the encroachment is denied. So, and this is going to happen, where I could see this happening is a situation where the encroachment doesn't already exist and where there's a desire to build out a structure or have some type of overhang that would be over on town property, not lying on top of it, but over onto town property. And that request is denied. And then that's where you see the appeal. That's what I could imagine.
Yeah, and if we were a bigger town with more people and we could have the appeal go to an individual who is not the supervisor of the initial decider, that would be excellent, and it could all be administrative. But I'm not seeing us having enough personnel to pull that off within town administration. That's my only concern. And again, we don't need to solve this problem here. We can chew on this for a while and send out some suggestions and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's my one concern.
Okay, I understand. And I think, talking it through too, there's definitely going to be many situations where a new encroachment would be part of a special review use application.
Could
likely.
well be, yes. Yeah,
And,
could well be.
that would be something then that would be considered by the Planning Commission.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that we could think of, I think, well, for new encroachments, I still can't wrap my head around the town clerk coming to a decision where they would deny the application. Like, I don't understand what grounds the town clerk would have for denying such a thing. That I only see the planning commission as kind of the only body besides the BOT that would really be able to make that judgment. And then going on from there, if there were an appeals process, you kind of outlined how the appeal will be evaluated here already, but it doesn't outline what grounds someone might have for appeal. Like, I feel like they have to appeal in a very specific way for a very specific reason, not just because they were denied, because of course, if you can just appeal after being denied, you simply would appeal.
Yeah. If this is boilerplate, then it almost looks like we would say the town clerk makes the initial decision, and if there's a dispute, that has to be reviewed as a special review use. I don't know if we'd be able to use that term, but it strikes me that, yeah, the appeal would almost seems that appeal would be appropriate for going to the planning commission, and that would avoid the need for an appeal strictly within administration, and that kind of construction requesting essentially a variance from these rules still looks like a planning commission job to me. But again, this is all off the top of my head, so
I think
definitive.
I think that's kind of a good working place to start this discussion in a couple weeks' time when it is an action item. And I think it is something where, you know, we might want to, excuse me, reach out to people we know on the planning commission, find out if it's something that they agree is a possibility of them having a role in it, as well as, you know, let's reach out to, you know, individually, people down in the central business district might have an idea of whether they want to be able to, who they might want to be working with on this too, and what they see as the future. So it's a chance for us to go do some information gathering and chew on this in the coming weeks.
So one thought I had in further discussion on this, and instead of if we're bringing it back as an action item, that it might be more appropriate to kind of have an alternative draft for review by the planning commission, as opposed to just switching out words.
I think that sounds like a good idea myself. It would be nice to see the whole concept presented.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Anything else on the right-of-way question this evening? If not, we will move forward into our staff reports, beginning with our town administrator.
Good evening, everyone, mayor, trustees, and staff, fellow staff members, and members of the public listening in. I'm going to try to go quickly since I know there's so many reports coming after me, but I wanted to give you a few of the highlights from my report. I wanted to give a shout out to the utilities team who got backing from the streets department when we recently had a water main break, and we had to call out a leak detector, and it took a few days to get it under repair. It was very cold. As we all know, they have to work, 7 days a week, often 12, 15-hour days in the mud, in the cold, in the water, in the ice. And I just want to recognize them for doing such a great job. And I actually included a really positive mention from someone in the public that was made on Facebook as well. As far as the COVID-19 update goes, I'll just give you the really quick highlights. We are seeing reductions in numbers across the county as well as across the state. We're seeing drops in incident rates as well as hospitalizations, in mortality, and so forth. So this is all really good news. The other good news that recently came out of the data is that there was an anticipation that we could see an increase in the numbers because of the lessening of restrictions, because we entered level yellow. And so far, so good. We haven't seen the spike. As a matter of fact, we've had some of our best numbers in the last few days. As far as vaccination goes, the county, Boulder County is doing really well. Last I heard, I believe we have vaccinated 70% of our folks 70 years and older. Also have gotten the frontline workers, the first responders are now working with the 65 to 69-year-olds, and then folks who also are more moderate risk healthcare workers, and of course teachers, which is really exciting. They moved up teachers. They are taking priority. There have been some sort of mass clinics around the state to get teachers inoculated quickly, which is also good news. We have been, as you know, working with our mountain cultural broker and the county to try to get a vaccination clinic up here. I know Dawn's been working closely with some of the local nonprofits to get ready and be prepared so that if it does happen soon, that the county gets more in the way of vaccines and they are able to do so. They will be able to instigate a clinic up here, and it would be at the community center. What I did want you to know is the last time I reported to you, the county, and not just Boulder County, but the state and many states were experiencing kind of an inconsistent delivery of the vaccines. And at one point, we only received 800, our county, in 1 week. We got 8,000 last week. My understanding is that we should see a steady increase, and that's also good news. So as far as the COVID-19 situation goes, things are looking brighter. We are still being warned, though, to continue to wear your masks and to continue to social distance. And because, you know, it's still not clear if even once you get vaccinated, if you can still carry and transmit the virus. And then, of course, there's the variants that are popping up as well. So still need to be cautious, but have a lot of reasons to be positive. The Star 5 program update, I will let Miranda talk more about that because she is on the county committee. And then I wanted to make sure that all of you reserve 6 p.m. on March 2nd. We'll be holding what we normally have is an annual meeting with the Boulder County Commissioners. Last year, we didn't hold it because of the pandemic, but we're going to go ahead and do it this year virtually. So please do keep that date and time available. It's a great time for the elected officials to meet each other and to share information about current and future collaborative efforts. I did attend the DDA meeting. I know Mayor Pro Tem John Baumhover wasn't able to attend it, so I thought I would just give you a really quick update from that meeting. They talked about various projects and initiatives that they've got underway, including the Public Art Master Plan, which they are hoping to be able to bring to the Board of Trustees sometime this spring. Chris Pelletier also provided the TIP project design update to get their input. It's the same version that he shared with you tonight. They also considered a draft version of the investment policy. We've been talking about that with them for the past couple months. And then I just wanted you all to know that the executive director, Hope Jordan, did announce that she will be transitioning out of the position, and she has offered to stay with them until a replacement can be found and trained. And the DDA is hoping to hire a replacement in April. I also just wanted to give you the heads up that the annex is closed. We did have a moisture issue in the bathroom and did have some evidence of mold. So we are working with Boulder County Public Health and with our SURSA folks to address the issue and specialists. So just until further notice that the annex is closed. Just briefly, I am on the committee, the Mountain Community Health Task Force, and we did hold our first meeting. And for those of you who aren't aware, we are working very closely with Clinica Family Health, and they received a Colorado Community Health Alliance grant, which is giving them the capacity to explore the possibility of expanding their health services up to the peak-to-peak area. It's really super exciting. I want to give big kudos to Claudia Schofler as well as Jean Nicholson. They've really been the driving force on in this project for the last 2 years, and it's just a real great honor to be on this force. And we will continue to give you updates monthly. And then our community development team, our building and planning group, Miranda and Cynthia and I were staying very busy, still getting lots of applications for permits, and inspections are taking place. And even though our number of permits issued is down compared to last year, the actual valuation of the projects is higher. So staying busy, and just wanted to give kudos to Miranda and Cynthia for keeping everything going even during a pandemic. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions for Town Administrator on her report? Not, we will hear from Town Treasurer, Rita.
Mayor, trustees, and member of the public. My report is quite short this evening. I am still working on finalizing year-end tasks. I provide the pre-audited financials for the year ended December 31, 2020 at the March 16th DOT meeting, including the January and February financials. Budget update. The 2021 budget book has been submitted to and approved by the Department of Local Affairs and can be found on the town's website. Let's see. Actually, the only other thing, the 2020 audit, I did connect with the auditor, and we are still to start the audit on April 19th. And that's it for me.
Well, congratulations on the budget being accepted by DOLA. That's always great to hear.
It is, yes.
Anyone else have any questions for Rita? Or we will move on to Miranda's report. Deputy Town Administrator, Town Clerk.
Mine is relatively short too. So over the last 30 days, it issued 8 new and renewed business licenses. I'm still working with the Caribou Room on their liquor license renewal, and for marijuana, working with Harvest House and the Kind Castle. And then over the last 30 days, we've issued 8 building permits. I've had 1 core request that is currently being worked on. And then I just kind of am giving a quick Envision update. So our Envision Advisory Committee has now met twice. The first meeting was really just to get kind of a ground rules of sorts set on how we were going to move forward in the process. I do just want to commend this committee. Their first assignment was to read over almost 250 pages over 2 weeks, including both the action plan for Vision 2020, the comp plan, and all of the SWOT analyses that we had done with community members, external organizations, and advisory boards and commissions. So a ton of work, and I'm really thankful that they dove right in. At the second meeting, we then kind of talked about some of the themes that they found within the SWOT analysis and outlined 7 committees. So now that advisory board is broken into an arts, culture, and education committee, community engagement, health, human and social services, housing, municipal government and economic development, parks, recreation, and open space, and sustainability, sorry, that should be environment. So the plan is over this week and next for those subcommittees to come together, and they are going to develop vision statements based on these 7 categories. And then from there, really start to work on some of the targeted goals of things that they feel that our community and our town should work on over the next 10 years. So I'm looking forward to continuing to provide updates from Envision. I just want to thank that committee for all the work they've done so far over the last month.
And thank you, Miranda, for all the work you're doing putting together Envision 2030. Any questions for Miranda? Not, we will move on to our town marshal report.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. Appreciate the chance to speak with you guys again. This month was relatively busy for us. We kind of had a spike in juvenile-related calls and mental health-related calls. They're pretty well detailed here. I won't go into all of those due to time and stuff. I do want to touch on, though, we did a elder abuse investigation that didn't end up being founded, but it took a fair amount of time, and it just kind of turned up to show that there is no nursing care available, adult nursing care available in the area here, and it's really difficult for those who need it. So I just saw something posted on Facebook, somebody that is volunteering that is a nurse, and I reached out to them potentially for this family. So hopefully things will get better for them. Something else I want to just touch on real quick is equipment. We have, or we're looking into purchasing a new tool called a BOLA wrap. I think it's got the ability to really cut down use of force complaints in law enforcement. Not that we are getting use of force complaints here, but I think it's a very good potential tool as opposed to using a taser to subdue somebody. Hopefully got a chance to look at that. Obviously it's not be all end all, but it's just another option, and not cheap, but compared to a lawsuit, it's super cheap. As you may or may not know, Senate Bill 217 that was passed last year requires us to have either a dash cam or a body camera on every vehicle or every officer beginning in 2023. We're trying to get a little bit ahead of the curve on that, and we purchased or are purchasing a camera and a terabyte storage device to download everything that we can get for the next year once that thing comes in, and just see what kind of usage we can expect, what kind of editing we're going to have to do, and what kind of labor it's really going to take to implement that program. Boulder Sheriff has had theirs for a few years, and they're getting ready to replace all of their cameras. They have 2 people that work full-time that do nothing but administer their camera program. So it's super expensive for them. I'm hoping we can do it for much, much less and still be in compliance. Lastly, we went on a little search and rescue mission for a missing shoe, and unfortunately it was not located. So there's 2 shoes out there that are missing each other, unfortunately. And that's about it for the month.
All right, well, the shoes, yeah. Any questions for the marshal? Not, we'll move on to Public Works. Chris.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have anything to add to my report that's in the packet, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
All right, well, I just want to add the thanks from all of us in town for the work you guys did on the water main break and keeping things running in the cold weather. But does anyone else have any questions for Chris or Public Works? Not hearing any, we'll move on to Community Center. Dawn?
Good evening. So I just want, my report's in your packet, and I just wanted to highlight the piece, the last paragraph about the upcoming vaccination clinic that will be held at the community center. I want to highlight that it will be the first community vaccination clinic held in Boulder County. And I really want to thank Karen Garrity, our administrator, for continually advocating with the county for this site in the mountains. Our job at the community center was to be in touch with our human services partners, both in the county and here in the Peak to Peak in Nederland, the pantry in particular, and the seniors, and be ready to jump in and say yes as soon as this opportunity came to us. And because of our constant communication and collaboration, we were able to do that and get on a meet. And we were called to a meeting last Thursday afternoon. And I want to note that this opportunity is coming to us through Boulder County Housing and Human Services. Chris Current of the Nederland Pantry had been in touch, Food Pantry had been in touch with Angela of that group. And because there was only 2 people, eligible people in their housing units in Nederland who wanted the vaccine, that obviously didn't constitute enough people to hold an entire clinic. And Angela just said, let's just pull it, let's just do the vaccination clinic at the community center. So they got in touch with us and we've created this email. So I want to be clear that the role of the community center, pantry, and seniors are to gather the information. This email address, Nederland Community Vaccine Info at gmail.com, has been created so all requests to be on the wait list go to that email or their number, and that will be forwarded to the people in Boulder County Area Agency on Aging, who will then contact the individuals to schedule once we know when the vaccines are coming and how many they'll be getting. So what exactly it's going to look like, it is not clear yet. We're just ready to accommodate them when we get the information on the vaccines. For the community center, that's going to mean we're going to have to cancel reservations at the fitness place for the time that they set the clinic up, because it will be done in the gymnasium. So we'll have to shut down the cardio deck during those hours. So that's my report. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them to the best of my knowledge.
Great news about the vaccines, Dawn. Any questions for Dawn about the community center? All right, moving forward. Again, thank you to all town staff for you guys keeping everything running and keeping making progress as we move forward. So Board of Trustees reports, I'm going to go real quick because we got 8 minutes before 10 o'clock and then I not really want to extend the meeting. Thing I just want to point out here is the second paragraph on my report is the next round of COVID funding looks to be bringing about $300,000 to Nederland to deal with COVID-19 fallout. And I want all the trustees to start thinking about ways we can use this to help the community. We've given about that much to our business community thus far. We could continue to do projects like that. We could look at rent support, utility support, a lot of different ideas. We don't yet know the details on how that money can be used, if there's going to be any restrictions on it from the feds, but I want everyone to start thinking about what we can do creatively with that money to really make the greatest impact for everyone here in Ned when that shows up from DC. Mayor Pro Tem Baumhofer.
I was unable to attend the DDA meeting, so I have nothing more to add than what Karen did. I would just shout out that there are 3 meetings over the next 2 days for the wayfinding, looking for public input. One tomorrow at 11 a.m., one at 6 p.m., and then a meeting on Thursday, February 18th. You can find those links posted on the town website for any of the public listening in. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Trustee Coombs' mail.
Yeah, I'll let you guys read the ProSab update unless you have any questions on that. As you can see, ProSab is getting pretty busy, especially in terms of kind of looking at town assets and how they're managed and talking to the various nonprofit boards that do that management work. And thank you to them. Beyond that, the Boulder County Consortium of Cities meeting was also quite eventful in that we have new commissioner, Marta Loa-Chamin, who is sort of stepping in for Deb Gardner and heading up those meetings. And a big part of that I wanted to make sure was on all of your radar was that the plan is for more cross-jurisdictional collaboration and to create ideas for that and some resource sharing. So I think there could be some good opportunities for Ned in there. I know Ned and Jamestown Lions have some very similar issues that they would like addressed by the county. So this might be an avenue for doing that. They're going to be asking representatives to bring kind of prepared information from their municipalities about 5 major topics, which are economic vitality, affordable housing, environmental sustainability, equity and equitable access to resources, and natural disasters, including wildfire and floods. So I am, going to be reaching out to folks, both staff and probably some trustees, about putting together information from Ned's perspective as those meetings come up every other month. So that is coming down the pipeline. And then finally, Boulder, the city of Boulder and Boulder County have asked for municipalities within the county to sign on to a housing stability protections advocacy request, which if you could scroll down to that actual attachment would be great. And this is to extend the housing stability efforts that Governor Polis put into place already. They are currently not slated to be extended. And so they were asking for towns to sign on to this. And those 3 bullet points that you see there are kind of the main issues. It's to extend or make permanent the executive order requiring landlords to give a 30-day demand for compliance rather than a statutory 10-day demand, to extend the moratorium on fees or penalties for late payments or cap late fees to a reasonable percentage, and to reinstate the eviction moratorium in Colorado to reaffirm alignment with Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So what I'm, I guess, asking from trustees today is whether or not we can get a nod of 4 in order to sign this advocacy request that's being requested by us from the county.
Yeah, I certainly approve that letter. Eric, I'm assuming you do as well.
Yes, I do.
So just Julian, do you nod?
I'm nodding.
Lindsay, do you nod?
I'm nodding.
Jonathan?
Nod.
All right. We all have signed on to that letter, Eric.
Great, thank you, folks.
Thank you for running that. Yeah, I don't want through here right now. I was making a joke about getting out of here by 10, but do we have a motion to extend the meeting? We'll probably only be to like 10:05, but just I don't want to have to rush through the last couple staff or trustee reports.
Trustee Taylor, motion to extend.
Second.
Miranda?
Trustee Taylor,
Yes.
Trustee Danforth,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Mayor Larson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover,
Yes.
and Trustee Corvallin unfortunately lost connection right at the start of the staff reports, and it doesn't appear she can jump back on, so she is no longer with us.
So
That's not a good way to say it.
And I was like, well, I don't mean it like that, but yeah, so
Dark, a little dark,
just in the moment.
So we saw her report is on the screen with regards to EcoPass and RTD, and it's certainly looking at when we, as she say, get back to quote unquote normal. It's going to be.
Can I speak about one other thing for her since she's not here?
Sure.
Her and I are on the Communities That Care task force, and we've been meeting a lot lately. And I just wanted to give you guys the heads up that they will be coming before you probably in March with a plan of action that they're hoping to take to kind of further their initiative for, you know, a healthy community, healthy teens, that sort of thing. So I just wanted to put that bug in your ear that they'll be coming to you and looking for support, and it'll be happening soon regarding some of their initiatives that they want to get going this summer.
All right. Good to know. Thank you. Trustee Danforth?
Sorry, nothing to report at this time. I was unable to make it to the last BZA meeting.
All right. Trustee Taylor.
Okay, so I had to go in late as usual because they're generally doing stuff I can't see at the start of the meeting. I showed up just in time to discover that Steve Williams is now president of the Planning Commission and Jim Reese is vice president. Congratulations, Jim. Then we saw a presentation from Chris Peltier, the same presentation you've seen today, only not quite as advanced. And what they're putting together right now at the Planning Commission is amendments to Chapter 17 of the Nederland Municipal Code covering regulations about subdivisions. And I asked if they could present their changes to that section as red lines so that we could see the original wording and the new wording. They said, no, that would be huge. So we're going to have to review the whole thing. So eventually we'll be looking at it, and just thought I'd provide a warning. You'll have to check the original wording by looking at the NMC. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Julian. I believe that brings us to the last page of our packet. Anyone have any other business they want to bring up? Anything to put on our radar before we call it a night?
This is Trustee Taylor. I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Trustee Danforth. Miranda.
Mayor Larson,
Yes.
Trustee Taylor,
Yes.
Trustee Danforth,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes.
Meeting is so adjourned. Thank you guys all so much. Have a great night.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.